Welcome to Tips, Tricks and Secrets in Vampire Survivors from a 1500 hour veteran, which is me, Dex. This is the third part in a series, and this one is more meant to be late game after you're done with the game, and today will be a bit different. Instead of sending you off to the other videos, I decided to download them, fix them up because some things have changed over time or were a bit redundant, and they will be added at the end of this video so you can watch them all in one single go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, then please consider giving the video a like, and if you want to see more, to subscribe to the channel. This has been by far the most insane video I've ever done, with over 60 hours of work put into it. As you can see with the graph here, it gets quite insane. So, enjoy the show. Oh god, we have a huge list to go over, so we'll start off with trivia. Garlic is the best weapon in the game. Period. Did you know that you can pet the dog in Vampire Survivors? It doesn't really work the way you would expect it, but if you type in PET, there are a bunch of hearts that fly towards him and will heal him. Nowadays the game has a total of 3 DLCs and potentially even one with Baldur's Gate. If you take a look at this screenshot, you can see that Larian, the studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, made a poll on Twitter where it asked, hey, do you want to see a co-op between Vampire Survivors and Baldur's Gate 3? And well, I guess the answer was yes. The other DLCs that exist so far are Legacy of the Moonspell, Tides of the Foscari and Emergency Meeting, which was a collab with Among Us. Nowadays there are a total of 70 characters in the game, 17 of those are secret, 25 are from DLCs, and every single time you buy a character, the prices for all of them increase by 10%, so you probably want to start with the more expensive ones. At this point there are 5 total normal stages, 4 bonus stages, 6 challenges, 2 hidden stages and 4 special stages. Those are just from the DLCs. All the stage items are on the stages even in your very first run. That is very important to know. So once you get to the Dairy Blend, you get the relic that unlocks the map, and then you can see, hey, there are stage items, but that doesn't unlock them. You can already pick them up even in your very first game, and that is what people use to win their very first run in Vampire Survivors. They pick up the Hollow Heart, evolve the whip to the Bloody Tear, and by that they have health recovery. Now, one thing that exists in the game nowadays are secret codes and spells, but did you know that you can unlock the Forbidden Scrolls of Morbane, for which you would need to defeat the Bone Ball on the Bone Zone by just clicking on the 6th relic, that is the yellow sign, 7 times? And then you can just use the codes and the spells. There's a huge list, I have them linked in the description, because I think you wouldn't expect that there are that many spells, even some that turn your screen upside down and other wonky things, like it's actually quite crazy. Did you know that you can delete your save file? Yes, you just have to go into the options, click on the account button 7 times, and then a button to delete your save file will appear. I would highly advise though that you actually make a backup of it so you can load it again, but this is probably the easiest way to just start out fresh. Have you ever tried to do a very specific run where maybe you wanted to refund the magnet but keep the rest, so now you have to refund all of the power-ups instead of just one? You can actually just click on it and deactivate it. That's it, it's out. Many people are not aware of this simply because it got added over time, but it's very useful. However, you sadly can't remove individual level up. So if you want to lower the level of charm, for example, there is no way but to refund and then take it to level 3 or whatever you wanted. Another option that is easily missed: with the introduction of Space 54, there is a new option called Random Level Up. With this, the game will give you a random level up. You can't choose anymore, which can create very difficult and also very interesting challenges in this game. This one is a bit of a silly one, but the background image you see in this video from time to time is just Vampire Survivors heavily blurred. And then just with a bunch of brightness and saturation. Now we will get into the topic of gold and gold farming, but before we kick it off, a short fun fact: golden eggs originally were just a gold sink, nothing else. People had a lot of money, though not by far as much money as nowadays, so the developer added them. They were not meant to be used in the game and just as a thing to do after you're done playing. That is also the reason why many events that get triggered in the game, they remove the golden eggs, so you have the experience as it's meant to be. For starters, the maximum of golden eggs that you can have is a number that is indicated by E34. That is a 1 with 34 zeros after it, and that just means you reach the limit. You can't get more, the game can't save more. At one point the counter for your golden X stats will break. That doesn't mean that they are wasted or gone or something like that, it just can't display them anymore. Weird things start happening, like at one point you'll always start off with the candy box as only selection in the game if you have enough luck. However, if you have even more golden X than that, and we are talking about a territory around E10 to E18 somewhere there, the candy box just never appears again, so I think luck based things may be affected by that it's just too much, it can't deal with that anymore. Now talking about the best gold farmer in the game, the title goes back to Semi, because there was an update that fixed a lot of lag issues with Vicious Hunger, that is the weapon that he starts with, and now he outperforms Trouser for most people easily. You may wonder yourself why that's the reason, because Trouser has 1% greed per level up, but if you have trillions and quadrillions and pentasillions of greed, it really doesn't make a difference. However, Semi has a couple of benefits. First of all, I'll tell you the build that I've been testing and using since then. Greatest Jubilee to gain bonus gold, and yes, it makes a ginormous difference, even though it causes a bit of lag. You go to Lake Foscari, I've tried out all of the maps, and this one was by far the best performer. You use Wicked Season as the starting Arcana, no endless mode. And this is the main difference to Trouser, since no more enemies will spawn after 30 minutes, you will have way less lag, and your level up speed is tied to the performance of your game. To prepare the run, make sure that you seal all of the items and every single non-gold related drop out of Breakables. Yes, you can actually do that. You can banish chickens, you can pretty much seal anything in the main menu if you go over to your collection, limit your weapons to 2 and find the candy box or Greatest Jubilee. This is your second weapon. For this entire thing you need to understand that level ups are limited to your FPS, but it's not exactly your FPS. You can't just have unlimited FPS and it's way faster, but the refresh rate of your monitor. The game allows you to have one level up per roughly 4 frames. That means if you have a 60Hz monitor, you will level up way less, roughly 15 times, compared to someone who has, for example, a 144Hz monitor. But I don't want to end this segment without talking a bit about Trouser, because it could be that Semi still lags your game too much, and if you're down to like 10 FPS or so, then you earn way less. Trouser, generally speaking, uses also Greatest Jubilee and a mix of either Blood Astronomia and Garlic, Zero Band of Healing and or Pentagram. Pentagram is just added on top to make sure that you can actually kill the enemies from time to time. I don't know all too much about Trouser nowadays, but I've checked out some posts about gold farming from people that have only used him, and this is what they are doing. Now let's talk about the Reaper kill methods in this game, and I mainly talk about this to clarify what's currently done and what's old, because many people see old videos or methods and think that's how you still do it. No. The main way how you do it is Infinite Corridor, that's the evolution of Clock Lancet. It halves the HP of anything it hits every single time it goes off, and Crimson Shroud, the evolution of Laurel, which limits the damage that you can take to only 10 even from the Reaper, but it also subtracts your armor from that. So if you take 10 damage but you have 6 armor, you only take 4. The minimum damage that you'll always take though is 1. It also deals a huge amount of damage to the Reaper when it explodes, and with those two weapons combined you kill the Reaper in roughly 30 seconds. Now let's quickly talk about the old methods. However, if you want to see the entire history on Reaper kills, I have a full video on that you can check out. The first one was Clarity. She used Rune Tracer to stand in a very specific spot in the library to shield her off from the enemies, and then with the insane bouncing in this certain location, the Reaper usually died within a single minute. This method was entirely unintended. The developer was quite surprised that people came up with that, and then things changed. The next main method that came out was Toasty. This one was actually intended because Toasty gains 65,520 armor on level 200. This matters because the Reaper deals 65,035 damage, so you only needed to get another 14 armor to only take 1 damage per hit, which is possible if you have all the armor in the game as well as Awake, as well as all the revivals, and then you just need something that heals you, like Bloody Tear. The killer weapon was Gatia Mari. What a surprise, it's a super powerful weapon, and back then every single chicken that the cats ate gave it +1 bonus damage, so it didn't take long until the Reapers died. And the final main old method that existed was with Leda. Leda is a very powerful character, and he played on the Dairy Plant, There you avoided experience until the Reaper spawned, because the Reaper's HP scales with your level. It's 65,000 multiplied with your level. And since Leda is so powerful, all you needed is 1000 edge, go for crit, then shoot at the Reaper while freezing him and he will die. Now let's talk about my favorite stage, Abyss Foscari. It belongs to the Tides of Foscari DLC. And the reason it's my favorite stage is just because it has everything. Amazing items, it also has an additional Arcana chest, which allows you to, instead of taking it at 21 minutes, you can take it whenever you please, whenever you get there. Though keep in mind, the moment you get close to that area, the Guardians will trigger and attack you. Unless you use Mad Groove, then they only trigger if you pick up their items. The stage is so great because it allows you to do many tough challenges, as it's a very hard stage, but at the same time most of the fun challenges also work there way better than anywhere else. In total there are 15 stage items, of which there are 8 individual items, 2 weapons, which are Prismatic Missile and Shadow Servant, 4 Guardian items, the Arcana chest, also a boss by the way, that is always there, and it's the stage with the most items except for Moongolo, but that one is kind of a boring stage to play on, so I don't count that. If you get really lucky and every single item spawns at max quantity, you can have a total of 28 items on the stage. We are not talking about the additionals or the Guardian items, just those passives. There's 1 armor, 5 empty tome, 6 attract orb, 5 crowns, 4 stone masks, 5 Skullomaniacs, 1 Torona and 1 Academy badge. The odds of these items appearing is very different, but even if all of them would fail, the game would force that at least one is there. Empty Tome only has a 10% chance per book to spawn, and we had a total of 4, so you roll 4 times 10%. Attract Orb, Crown, Stone Mask, Skullomaniac have a 20% chance, and Armor, Torona and Academy badge, since they only have 1, are guaranteed to always spawn. Enemies on this stage behave very differently. Instead of just walking, they walk for a moment, then they stop, then they walk again, then they stop, until you press a blade on the stage, so they walk normal again. This helps out a lot for certain challenges that you can do, that early on when the weapon is not as strong, you just don't press the pressure blade, and once you want to kill more enemies so they move in faster, you step on it and they are back to normal. There are also mini guardians that spawn, pretty much just smaller versions of the big guardians, but they still drop 1 golden egg just like the big counterpart. And as a little extra, you probably know Torona, the item that gives you 85% stat boost to all the 4 main attributes, being might, area, projectile speed and duration. But if you pick that up and you banish it at 8 to avoid the curse, it's still on the stage, so you can later on decide to pick it up if it turns out that you're way too strong for the enemies. One thing I should note though, even though Empty Tome and Torona are on the stage, when I play and do challenges, I always pick them up from LevelUps, because otherwise you have to walk across the entire map just to get them, and that delays your progress so much that it is not worth it in my eyes. And as a final note on the stage, I would like to talk about the waves, because one thing that very commonly happens is that everything is fine until minute 28 and all of a sudden chaos erupts and you die or the game lags like crazy. It's insane. On wave 27 the enemies have 700 HP and this gets multiplied with your curse. If you also run inverse mode, which I highly recommend on this stage because it gives a bonus arcana, this also multiplies the enemy HP by 3. And these enemies that spawn there, they drop 3 experience. That's the case for most of the enemies in this game. It's between 0.5 to 3 experience. 0.5 would mean that they only have a chance to drop 1 experience point. Now the moment you hit wave 28, keep in mind wave 27 had 700 HP, wave 28 has 100 HP multiplied with the player level. So in other words, the wave has as much HP as the last wave if you were on level 7. But usually you're way higher, you're in the hundreds. And this is again multiplied with curse, multiplied by 3 with inverse mode. But wave 28, both enemies that spawn give 30 experience each. But that's the main reason why you go from everything is fine to suddenly nothing dies anymore, you get overwhelmed and it's over. Wave 29, huh? How can we top the previous wave? Well, we actually don't. Like, honestly, we don't. The enemies go down from 100 HP to only 80 HP, and the experience, instead of being 30 for all of them, is 25 for one part that spawns and 0 for the other one. Yeah, that's weird. Now, if you think it's easier though, nope. I often survive wave 28, but wave 29 kills me. What happens is the enemies are way bigger, and so when they spawn, they push each other into the character pretty much in an instant, and you get overwhelmed and die to the ridiculous damage that they have. Now we will talk about Gatti Amari, the most interesting weapon in this game by far, and possibly also the most broken one. Note that this segment is very long because I explain every single mechanic about this weapon, and there is a lot, but if that's too long, the video is chaptered, so you can just jump ahead to more fun things to do in Vampire Survivors, which are my tips of things that you can do when you're done with the game to keep the fun and play a little bit more. Cats will attack you, break things, even if it hurts them, including game performance by the way. But they are so strong that they can literally kill the Reaper, so pretty much they are just like real cats, yeah. And if you don't believe me, well, we did a no movement challenge where the goal was to not move a single time and still kill the Reaper, and take a guess who killed the Reaper? Yeah, it was the cats, it was the cats. Now with these things, it's very important to get not too invested. Okay, I got a lot invested. Listen, there's a lot of information about this weapon. It's one of my favorite weapons just because there is so much to it, so we'll take a look at it in detail. I'll explain everything to you. Everything that you see here and more. More! Okay, let's calm down a bit. We will start with the calm stuff and then we get to the crazy things. The more chickens they eat and the more luck you have, the more actions they will do. But this also decreases the chance of bad actions. I mean, there's more to it, they also gain damage and this and that, you know, but like, simple. Actions include attacking the player when they cross the path, attacking the enemy when they cross the path, and breakables, so candelabras and stuff like that, they count as enemies, and when they cross the path with a cat, they will fight, and they create a scuffle cloud, okay? Remember that because I'll talk about scuffles quite a lot. When they cross the path with an item, if it's an NFT, the cat will always explode, it just goes poof, gone. If it's a clover, these little clovers that increase your luck when you pick them up, then the cat that eats it, it will double the speed, but when it despawns, it's just over. Like, you don't have to buff anymore, so make sure you actually pick up the little clover. For Rosary or Vacuum, they have a chance to trigger that, but if it fails then it's just destroyed. For the Orilochion, it's the same story, except when it fails, then the cat will freeze. Only the cat that ate it. So if you do a run with only cats, and if you're really masochist, then you do it also with Silent Old Sanctuary, that will lead to them doing bad actions very often, just because they start eating chickens, so they start doing more actions, and at that point the chance for bad actions is still very high, and suddenly you may end up dying, usually around the 5 to 8 minute mark. However, once you reach that mark, it quickly turns into just being positive actions within a minute or two. So if you survive that with enough armor, with revivals, you're good. Every single chicken that they eat gives them between 0.95 damage to 0.05 bonus damage. The 0.05 is the minimum, and until that's reached, they need to eat 102 chickens. Fun fact, by the way, in the past it used to be +1 damage every single chicken, so now they need to eat 20 chickens after this minimum, and in the past there was just 1 chicken. Yeah, that's why they were so broken. They are still broken, but they were 20 times more broken. Chance is everything that a cat does. The base chance is 10% to do any interaction, and it's multiplied by 1.1 per chicken eaten. That doesn't mean with 2 chickens it's just multiplied by 1.2, but it's multiplicative. In other words, if you ate 0 chickens, then you need 900% bonus luck, or 1k in total, that they don't do any bad actions anymore. If you eat 10 chickens, however, you only need 290% luck and they won't do any harm. At 20 chickens, you only require 49% luck, that's the base value, you usually reach 60% in the game, and that means nothing will happen at all. Or in other words, that would mean you don't need to do anything anymore and they will never harm you. Here's a list, by the way, that shows exactly what happens at what chicken point, what luck would be required, and at what point you're safe. So we already talked about a scuffle is when 2 cats meet, and this one is completely broken. It attacks 33 times a second with the damage that a cat has. And yes, if you get limit break, then the damage goes up by 0.5 every single time you pick it, multiplied with your might stat. it's still multiplied with your might stat. So 0.5 at 200% might means they increase their damage by 1.5 multiplied by 33 times attacks a second with one single scuffle. One. But how many scuffles can we have? So because they meet and the maximum of cats that you can have is 30, that means we can only have 15 scuffle clouds, right? Wrong. The moment the cats start fighting, they count as despawned. And this is a logic flaw that I had in a no movement challenge where the cats killed the Reaper because I calculated it, how long it should take. It was way faster. No, they despawn. That means once they are gone, the next time the weapon gets casted, they respawn, whatever amount you have. Now let's talk about amount. How much amount can you have on the cats? Because we know the limit is 30, can we reach that? Now the weapon itself with limit break can reach 20 amount. There's also player bonuses, which is a total of +9 in the most optimal case, which is the gold purchased amount, then the duplicator for another +2, the academy badge gives another 3, and the Arcana beginning in the game also gives another 3 if it's the starting weapon. That means you have a total amount of 29, but realistically speaking it's 23 to 26, because usually you don't have access to academy badge, and most of the times you don't want to have the beginner Arcana. So let's just say it's 26, okay? Because we can pick the Arcana, I think that's fair to say if you go for dedicated cat run. What is the cooldown? Well, the cooldown of the weapon is 5 seconds, but the maximum cooldown reduction in the game is 90%, which you can reach if you use certain methods. That means every 0.5 seconds you would spawn 26 cats that create 13 of these clouds, and you repeat that. Now to the final missing puzzle piece, which is duration. The base duration of the cats, and for the scuffle it's the same, is 5 seconds. Just with the gold upgrades you can reach 40% bonus duration, but there's also the Spellbinder, which is another 50%, and there's also Torona's box, which is another 25%, so in total we get a bonus of 115% duration. But we can forget about all of this if we play on a stage with an additional Arcana, so for example on Abyss for Skari, and then we can take the Lost and Found painting, which gives us 1% bonus duration every single level up, reaching the cap of 500% duration or 400% bonus duration. That means at that point the cats will last 25 seconds every single time they make a scuffle. And now it's time to use everything that we have just discovered to figure out just how much damage the scuffles will do if we have the max amount on the screen. We will assume that the cats deal 300 damage for this, which is actually way less than normal cats will deal if it's a solo weapon, because with Silent Old Sanctuary you get a bonus of 210% might in total on a normal character. That's a multiplier of 3.1 on the base damage of the cats. But for this, 300 multiplied with 33 attacks per second is 9,900 damage. Now we already know that we spawn a maximum of 26 cats, that leads to 13 scuffles, but we do this 2 times per second. We also know that it lasts 25 seconds, so if we multiply the 26 with the 25 seconds, we have a total of 650 scuffles at the same time on the screen. At this point, after half a second, 13 of the scuffles will disappear, but then 26 new cats spawn, so they do it again. And with enough area, so Boogaloo of Illusions, they will pretty much instantly do it. So this will be the main amount we always have around, on average at least. So what is 650 times 9.9k? That's 6.4 million damage per second. We're not done yet. Per enemy hit. Per enemy hit. So did I manage to convince you? Did I manage to convince you just how powerful and also interesting the cats are in Vampire Survivors? And lastly, I will talk about more fun things to do when you're done with the game or you don't know what to do anymore. It's important to know that none of these use Golden Axe, because otherwise it's a bit pointless if you want to do a challenge or a fun experience, since they kind of destroy that unless the fun experience is to grind endless amounts of Golden Axe, I guess. And by the way, a majority of these challenges were done on my channel, so if you want to check them out because you can't be bothered to do it yourself, then well, the links are in the description. The main thing that I recommend doing is solo weapon limit breaks. Go in inverse mode to get an additional Arcana from the merchant, limit your weapons to just one, and use Wicked Season as well as Silent Old Sanctuary to gain a huge amount of stat bonuses. Depending on the weapon, you might want to use other Arcana as starting Arcana, because not all of them are affected the same way. But my tip is, Limit Break is your friend. Look at the stats gained if you are there, if you don't know how a weapon works, or you just check out the wiki to know what items to use. Alternatively, Paranormal Scan is a great addition instead of just a solo weapon limit break. It gives you permanent, at least for the run, bonus stats. So even cooldown you reach the cap there and it's a whole new experience. On maximum cooldown every 1.5 seconds it will give you a small amount of bonus stats, but if you do that an entire run long, then you will reach the cap for many of the stats in the game. My recommendation is to play on Abyss Foscari because there's an additional Arcana on the stage. That doesn't mean that you get one more compared to other stages, but it means you get it earlier than at the 21-minute mark. Keep in mind you will have to fight the Guardians, which can be quite difficult on certain weapons because you'll only have 1 or 2 if you go for the Paranormal Scan. And the second tip is, pick up the Empty Tome from LevelUps instead of walking over there. I also do the same for Toruna because I have more important things on my mind and otherwise it sets you back way too much and honestly most of the items are not even that useful to use. Next up we have retaliatory damage builds and I will only note 3 of them. Now the way it works is you pick the Arcana Divine Bloodline. It gives you 5 bonus damage per armor point that you have to a maximum of 50, so the maximum bonus damage, it's flat by the way, is 250 damage. This only works for the weapons that are listed and not their evolutions. And also with the 50 armor, you will increase retaliatory damage, so when you touch the enemies, by 500% maximum. For every single point of HP that you have missing, you gain 0.1 bonus damage, or in other words, 10% of your missing HP is added to the flat damage of every single weapon. There is no cap to that. That means if you have 100,000 HP and you're down to 10,000, then 10% of 90,000, meaning 9,000, is added as bonus damage on top. The way you increase your HP like that is also because of the Arcana, because every single time you kill an enemy with retaliatory damage, you gain 0.5 max health. This is empty health, so it's not red, it's just black, which is great because that also increases the damage that you deal. There are 2 weapons that are especially good with this. The first one is Crimson Shroud, because the explosions when you get hit, they all count as retaliatory damage that increase your HP. The biggest issue is to trigger this, but on Abyss Foscari there spawn mini guardians and they are quite fast as well as powerful, so they walk through, trigger it, and you constantly wipe out all of the enemies. There are probably also some self-harming weapons that may trigger it, but I have never used that, so I don't know, but I would assume there is one. Legionnaire is similar to the Crimson Shroud because it spawns a huge army of your character as projectiles. They also count as retaliatory damage, so they just rush over the entire screen, no need to get hit, and believe it or not, it's actually not that hard to reach over 100,000 HP, which means you can actually survive a hit of a Reaper without going for a cheese build. And the final tip about retaliatory damage builds is a character which is Toasty. At level 100, Toasty gains almost 10,000 empty HP, and at level 200, she gains over 65,000 bonus armor. That means all the bonuses are maxed out right away. If you take Hollow Heart at 10,000 HP and max it out, you will reach almost 25,000 HP, because the bonus is multiplicative, not additive. So it multiplies whatever you had before you took the upgrade. As a tip, you can use an item that disappears when you evolve a weapon. So if you for example take Paranormal Scan, the moment you evolve it, the little Among Us figure will disappear, freeing up a slot, and then you can pick up Hollow Heart. Metallio Left also adds another 5% HP 8 times, and then you will end up with 36,700 HP. Empty HP. So the bonuses apply. Awake would give another 10% multiplicative bonus every single time you die and revive. However, good luck dying at that point if you have that much armor and that much HP. An incredibly tough challenge is beating Boss Rash with Peppino. I will not spoil too much and just explain the basic things. The character starts with negative 90% movement speed if you have the 10% upgrade from gold, and with rings this goes up to negative 40%. So even though it's still very slow, it's 6 times as fast as before. The extreme version to this would be that you do not use wings. And as a quick tip on how to do one thing, how to deal with the Reapers that spawn, use rosaries. They nuke them. Next up we have Christine with a gorgeous moon run. The goal is to get infinite level ups, which happens rather quickly once you have Gorgeous Moon, but the difficult part is getting there. This character without Golden Axe can reach the max amount of level ups possible per second just because of Gorgeous Moon and the way it works. It increases the amount of experience you get per proc per amount, and the weapon limit breaks infinitely with bonus amount. Every single proc on the weapon with limit break also re-triggers it, so the more you level up, the more insane this becomes. However, you will have to use Laurel and need to get at least 87.5% cooldown reduction, which is simple on her because she has more cooldown reduction, because some bosses don't die to Gorgeous Moon, and also too much curse means the enemies actually rush in so fast they break your shield and eventually kill you. So you need to have this cooldown reduction that Laurel recharges faster than it's used up. Next up we have a zero weapon win challenge, even though the zero is in quotation marks because you do not have enough banishes in the game to get rid of all of them. The way you can do that is by just using Laurel or Paranormal Scan, because all they do is either shield or heal you. In the video that I uploaded, I modded the game to have more banishes, so it was a legitimate zero weapon run, but you can either use Trouser, which starts with the candy box, or you use a character that starts with Paranormal Scan or Laurel. Then you can also do never move once challenges, and by the way, all of these challenges you can further increase that by removing power-ups or other things, banishing the use of certain Arcana. For example, I personally banish stuff like Awake and the Bloodline Arcana because some of these are too overpowered unless nothing else works, and here you just stand still, you're never ever allowed to move, and you will realize, if you've never done this, it's way harder than it looks. You have to figure out what weapons are good and what weapons are bad in this very different way of playing the game, and the moment you realize that you can't pick up chests, meaning you can't evolve unless a boss dies on top of you while you can evolve and it's post 10 minutes or wherever you play, it's not that simple. As a special one, by the way, attempt a never move once challenge with Toasty. Have fun. Vampire Survivors is utter chaos, but what about beauty? Yes, try to do the most beautiful build in Vampire Survivors. Here's my attempt on it that you see currently on the screen, and I absolutely loved it. But give it a shot yourself, this video was quite old, so nowadays you can probably add a lot new weapons and make it look even more mesmerizing. One thing I've mentioned earlier already is random level up option challenges. So you just get forced into whatever. You can even combine this with the option to just jump into a run with a random character on a random stage for ultimate randomness. The relic is from Space 54 for the random level ups, so you have to go there and get it. Another challenge is something I've mentioned in this video, which is to win your very first run. That means after a reset, you have to win this very first run. If you lose, you just have to delete the save file again and restart from scratch because you don't want to unlock anything. And this is way harder than it looks like, because usually you're not intended to win this. It's straight up impossible. But once you figure out that a hollow heart is on the stage, you can get Bloody Tear and heal through most of the enemies except for 2 crucial waves, but how about you figure that one out yourself? Next up we have probably the most difficult challenge to complete. Trying to find a reason why Carello is still in the game. Yeah. I don't know. And lastly, a hardcore one. Randomly watch 1 to 2 Vampire Survivors videos on my channel and wake up 8 weeks later sleep deprived after you've watched the entire 500 video playlist and now realize there are even more amazing Horde survivals that you can discover. Now you'll get to listen to the second part that was released in this series, but it's edited down and changed a bit to make sure that all the information is still correct nowadays, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. Have fun. Note that for some of these I will refer you to the wiki, simply because this is very time sensitive, and in 3, 4, 5 months it may look very different. Whenever you start the game you are in the main menu, and there is one tab that a lot of people tend to ignore, though it's one of the most important tabs that exist, which is the Unlock tab. This lists all the unlocks that you can have in this game, except for a few that are hidden to begin with, but will later be shown. So I highly advise that you always check this out, because this answers 95% of your questions on how to do certain things. For the stage progression, it is advised that instead of first finishing Mad Forest, you go over to Inlaid Library and finish this one while also farming up gold to become stronger, since Inlaid Library is an easier stage. There There are some waves that will be a lot more difficult further down the line, but there are a ton of farm waves that allow you to get all the weapons that you need. For the rest of the stages, the progression is fine, where you don't have to switch it up. Each of them have their own difficult part. On the Dairy Blend, there are some waves that are incredibly difficult to deal with, especially the final one. On Gallo Tower, it's all in all that you get less experience across the board, and on Capella this is kind of combined, where you have more difficult waves and less experience. Talking about all the stages, the number one advice that I want to give you is stop running, instead start killing. Most people that start out playing the game panic quite easily, especially in situations where this is not required and they are super safe. So I advise you that you get used to how much HP the enemies have, how much damage your weapons deal and how they work, because else you just run away, you don't become stronger, and once the next wave spawns that is more powerful, you will die regardless. Every single stage has one or even more relics on them, but the one that you should focus on is the one on the Dairy Blend called Milky Way Map. Whenever you pause the game, you'll have a map that shows you all the relics, all the items on the stages, etc. And then you can go back to the Mad Forest, to the library, and unlock all the relics, where some of them are just cosmetics and don't help you all too much, while others will give you insane power increases. One of those relics is the so-called random Matsu, which unlocks the Arcana in this game. Arcana are quite wild, with some of them having very wonky effects, but all in all they are super powerful, and you want to make sure that you collect all of them. Once you have the map unlocked, you'll realize that every single stage has item pickups on them, and these are incredibly powerful, since when you pick them up they don't replace one of those that you own, and instead they are additional ones. Now if you pick them up while you have 5 pairs of weapons, then the next one that you pick up will fill out the 6th slot, so you want to avoid that, and instead you want to pick them up when you have already 6 pairs of items, which is the maximum in this game, and then they will be added as 7th, 8th, 9th one. And one very important note, let's say for example you're stuck in a run, you need to leave, or you just wanted to unlock something very quickly. All you have to do is hit escape, go to options and click on quit. You still receive all the gold and the unlocks that you earned in this run, and this is how most people do it whenever there's a new update. They just check out in the unlock tab what they need, they quickly unlock it and then leave the game after 2 or 3 minutes. Now I will talk about game mechanics, and the first one being chest evolutions. In general, if a boss spawned at 10 minutes or later, they will always be able to evolve your weapons if you fulfill the criteria. However, this has nothing to do with when you pick up the chest. This is determined in the code what each chest will contain, as well as odds of how likely they are to be basic chests, triple chests and penta chests. There are 3 exceptions for the stages, the first one being Mad Forest. The very first chest that you can obtain there at minute 1 from the bat is an evolution chest. However, you only have a 30% chance to get this one. This chance is increased with the more luck you have. Then we have the Dairy Blend, where every single chest can evolve, that means all of those prior to 10 minutes, and on Capella it's the same story, where every single chest can evolve. Now one thing you may notice while playing is that level 20 and level 40 take an incredibly long time to level up. This has to do with the formula in the game that calculates how much experience you need to level up, and this is important for you because once you reach level 20 and 40, you know there will be a large time gap until you get more weapons, so make sure that you got the most important things prior to that, because it will take you quite some time until you reach the next level. While playing the game, you may come across red gems. Red gems simply indicate that there's a lot of experience in this gem, but there's also a different game mechanic that is very important here. If there are roughly 400 to 500 gems on the screen, then to prevent lag, the game starts accumulating all the experience in one single gem, which is the furthest one away from you. Usually if you walk into one of the 4 corners, you may find it. The way the game does it is that it first hoovers up all the experience that is currently still on the stage with a certain distance to you, and then in one of the 4 corners, because this is, the furthest away from you, it will accumulate 1 red gem, and that is the reason why sometimes when you pick up this red gem, you level up 5, 6, 20, 40 times, while in other cases, for example when a boss dies and you pick up the red gem, it's a little bit more than usual but not that much, and the reason is that the bosses give a set amount of XP, while this accumulation red gem that I'm talking about can in theory have an endless amount depending on how long you let it accumulate. But the important note is that no experience in this game is ever lost. And now let's talk about spawn mechanics in the game. If you take roughly 50% of your screen and go out to the left side, top side, right side, pretty much all around you, this is where the enemies will spawn. And this is also where, if the enemies leave that area, they will despawn. The only exception are bosses, where if they leave this area, they will instead teleport to another side and then walk in again. However, normal enemies, if they leave this area, as I said, they will despawn and all the damage that you have done to them is wasted. One thing you should probably focus on more than you do right now is breaking the breakables on the stages. They can either be the braziers or the candelabras, and you can get coins out of them, gold bags, of which there are 2 different ones, a rosary that kills all the enemies, a so-called NFT where you breathe fire and it deals a lot of damage, an Oreologion which allows you to freeze all the enemies, a vacuum to hoover up all the experience on the entire stage, floor chickens which heal you, a gilded clover which triggers a gold fever to earn a ton of money, and a little clover which increases your luck by 10%. Some of the maps have auto drop, so for example on the Bone Zone you can only receive the gold coins and the gold bags, the smaller ones, which is actually very beneficial if you want to have a gold run. Now I will talk about weapons, but I will reference a lot towards the wiki, that you go there and check it out, because otherwise I'll just talk for 50 minutes about all the weapons in the game and exactly how they work. In general, the main thing you have to understand is that there are multiple weapon types. And I'm not talking about something that is in the code where one is this type and the other one is that type, but what I'm rather talking about is that some weapons are meant for the early game. So for example, Garlic and Song of Mana are amazing to early on kill the enemies and quickly level up so you can overpower them and not get overpowered instead. Then there are weapons like King Bible that are incredibly protective, however they don't have a lot of damage, so once you face enemies that don't receive knockback, you have a difficult time to deal with them, but aside from this, they are amazing to keep you alive. Certain weapons are limited to the screen, like the Rune Tracer, which just bounces within the border of your screen, and other weapons, they will leave your screen and travel into the spawn zone of the enemies, so the moment they spawn, they already get hit. For example, the Death Spiral, Hellfire, pretty much anything that leaves the screen will hit the enemies off screen. This also includes weapons like the Lightning Ring or the Thunder Loop, because they hit the enemies wherever they are, so they don't care about how far the enemies are away. I will not spoiler how every single weapon works and to which category they belong to, but I recommend that you just check them out and give every weapon a chance and try to analyze how you should use them, in what cases you should use which weapons, and especially certain combinations. Like for example, Garlic has no knockback on its own, but it reduces the knockback resistance of enemies, while the King Bible has exactly the same radius as the Garlic, so they make a perfect pair to keep you safe. Every single weapon and item in this game has a weight associated to them, which simply means this is how likely they are to appear on a level up. The way the game does it is it just bunches them all up together, rolls a random number within that range, and whatever it lands on is the weapon that you get. There are more mechanics to this, like for example how much luck you have makes it more likely that you get weapons that you already own, but all in all this is just to show you, here are the likely weapons as well as the unlikely weapons, and it shouldn't be underestimated that it can be quite difficult to get those with a lower number. A 50 can already be enough that you will never ever see this item or weapon in an entire run. Now to talk about which item you should use on which weapon, I again refer you to the wiki because the list is just ginormously long. In general, if you don't know what to pick, just take something that makes the most sense on most of the weapons that you have, instead of picking something that is only good for one singular weapon. But later on I will talk about the most powerful items in the game, so in case you're lost, don't worry about it. Another important thing to know is that every single weapon in this game has a limit to the amount that it can have on the screen at the same time. This is also per weapon, even if you would have the same weapon multiple times, it would apply individually. But let's say for example a weapon has an amount limit of 20 and it's on the floor, lasts very long, and you hit the 20, then this would mean that you would no longer spawn additional projectiles until the old ones have disappeared. And while this doesn't matter for most of the weapons, because if you have that as a problem then you're overpowered, some of the weapons have very big issues. Like take for example King Bible, if you have too much amount then it leaves a gap in the circle around you, or something like Center Water, where if it's too long on the floor and you want to move around, then it doesn't shoot down more Center Water because the limit is already reached, and that means you can't move around since no more weapons will drop. Every single weapon applies knockback to the enemies, but this knockback may be literally 0. This may sound a little bit weird, but this causes a staggering effect where the enemies can't move if they are attacked too many times, or you can call it stutter movement or whatever you wanna call it. This can be so extreme that not even the Reapers can move anymore. And keep in mind that the Reaper is knockback resistant, and this also applies to, for example, the Guardians, that if you have a lot of layers of center water on the floor and they constantly get attacked, then they slow down heavily, and this allows you to get away from certain enemies that may be impossible to kill right now, but you just slow them down and kill them. Now I'm dedicating an entire point to the best weapon in the game, Garlic. Well, the point is something else, but I already mentioned this when I talked about the different types of weapons. Garlic is one of the best weapons in the game to get going early on, since you can just mow through the enemies, ignoring them entirely since you one-shot them, and you level up like crazy. This can be a difference of reaching level 8 at 3 minutes or reaching level 20 at 3 minutes, and now you have way more powerful weapons. One downside is obviously that you'll be missing a weapon, but you don't need that many weapons in this game to win. It's rather more important that you choose the right weapons, and against what many people believe, as I mentioned, Garlic reduces the knockback of all the enemies that it damages continuously, so again and again, meaning it's not entirely useless in the late game, but to be fair, most enemies will not even get close enough to get hit by it. Now let's talk about items, and there is not that much to say. As I already talked about, there are items that you can pick up from the stages, and you can have them as additional items, so once you have already 6, you can get a 7th one, 8th one, and so on, depending on how many are on the stage. But what are the most powerful items in the game? In general, by far the strongest one is Empty Tome, because the 40% cooldown reduction it provides is incredibly powerful. Next up we have the Duplicator, which gives up to 2 additional amount that applies to pretty much almost all the weapons. There are a few exceptions, but even something like the Whip will get additional slashes, so it's still good for that. Then we have the Candelabrador, which provides a huge amount of bonus area, which just means you hit way more enemies and therefore get way more experience, because the faster you kill the enemies, the faster they respawn, and that means more experience. And finally, as the last one, we have Spinach. Now Spinach gives 50% bonus damage, but keep in mind that this is only on top of your other bonuses, so the 50% is usually rather something closer to 20 to 40%. And the final one I will mention is Torona, which is somewhere before or after the Duplicator, depending on your build. I will not go further into it because explaining that kind of spoils a lot about the game, but if you can get your hands on that, then this is definitely a must-have. Maybe one that I should also talk about is the Crown, where you get 40% additional growth. Now, if you don't have Limit Break unlocked yet, then ignore this one, okay? It doesn't help you enough that it would be justified to use it, but once you have Limit Break, this actually becomes a core item in your build because you level up way more, and that means you Limit Break more on your weapons. And while I talk about items, I should probably also mention that you don't have to evolve every single weapon. Some of the weapons, like for example Garlic, are better left unevolved because you still get the effect, but the item that it requires to evolve it is horrible, the Pomarola. It used to be way worse than it is right now, but I still advise against it, and you're better off just picking one of these items that I recommend here. And also on the flip side, just because you pick up the Empty Tome, since it's the most powerful item, doesn't mean you have to pick up the Magic Wand to evolve it into a Holy Wand. Now I will shortly cover the evolutions in the game, and yet again check out the wiki for more information on them because it's a lot easier, but you have all of them in front of you right now. Most of the evolutions can be done by just having the right item and picking up a chest that can evolve. But then there are also unions. Unions are in general all of the weapons that require another weapon and they combine with each other. And for example, Firachi is an exception that also needs an item on top of that. Then you have 2 special weapons, being the Infinite Corridor and the Shroud, mostly because you only unlock the items after a special event in the game, so you can't obtain them earlier. Then there's the only triple evolution in the game, which is the Bracelet, the Bee Bracelet, and the Tree Bracelet. You just have to get them to level 6 and then pick up an evolution chest to upgrade them. I guess at that point I should also mention that Vandalier is the only evolution that has multiple level ups aside from the Tree Bracelet. And then there are gifts like the Soul Solution. It acts like an item and goes into the item row. And then you have the Candy Box as well as the Super Candy Box, but I'll skip explaining that one because either you already know what it does or it would be a major spoiler. I will ignore the DLC weapons here, just keep in mind that all of the items need to be maxed out, that you can evolve them, but talking about the morph weapons, for these you need a relic, and once the character reaches level 80, he will evolve into a different character with usually amazing or at least advanced effects, and the weapon will also evolve. Now I will talk about the different kinds of enemies in this game, and I will trash talk a weapon that is believed to be very good, but it's actually harmful and can even be the reason that you lose without noticing it. Though one important point, this is just an evaluation, so if you like the weapon, you want to go for it, do it. The most important part is, have fun. So a majority of the enemies that you face in this game have a level scaling. The higher your level, the higher their HP, and it's not a slight one. If you're level 2, then they have twice as much HP as they had when you were level 1. If you're level 10, then they have 10 times as much HP, and so on. Now, if you reach a point where you have everything maxed out, it's logical that you don't want to level up anymore, since the enemies grow in power, it's only the HP that grows, but it keeps going up, while you don't increase in power anymore. Now this is talking about normal cases without limit break. And then there are enemies that just have a set HP amount. They are usually the ones that you face first on the stage, or some harder ones later on. Notably the werewolf on the Mad Forest and the walking witches on the library. They have a set amount of HP, so no matter what your level is, they will always be powerful, or I guess depending on how fast you level up, way weaker than the rest of the enemies. And now to trash on a weapon, this is about the Pentagram. The Pentagram is known to be a weird weapon that can be a lot of fun, but it erases experience as well as chests, so you quickly want to level it up, which you can do with the red gem that I explained earlier, and just max it out immediately. However, is it actually beneficial? Well, Pentagram on its own has a huge downside that once it clears all the enemies spawn in one big chunk, because the game goes in alert mode and says, uh-oh, we fell below a threshold of enemies that I want to have on the stage, I have to spawn more than normal, and it will spawn them all in at once. They push each other towards you, and now you have a tough time dealing with them. Now the reason most people think Pentagram is powerful is because of the inflated damage numbers that it has, but Pentagram works differently than other weapons. Since it's meant to just erase enemies, make them disappear, it always deals the max amount of damage to them. So if they have a total of 600 HP but only 1 HP left, then Pentagram will always deal 600 damage to them to guarantee that you always get the kill. Overkill obviously happens with all weapons in this game, but none are as extreme as Pentagram. Then there are some other quirks that involve the Stalker, who has 650,000 HP multiplied with your level, and only Pentagram can make him go away, so the damage is attributed to it, but it doesn't really actually deal the damage. But usually the reason why people go for Pentagram is because of Moon. Moon is the evolution, and you use Crown to get there, and the benefit is that Moon, once it blasts off, it gives you bonus experience and soaks up all the XP that is on the stage. While this sounds great, if you think back on how most of the enemies work, that they become stronger with the more levels that you have, you actually don't want that. You don't want a weapon that forces it on you. As I said, the only exception is when you go for limit break, because you keep leveling up your weapons, but first you have to unlock that, and second, most of the times you don't need that because you outgrow the enemies either way. Now to cover the 4 different boss types in this game, the first one is the one that just has a chance to drop a chest. I mentioned the bat earlier, that is on Mad Forest with an evolution chest that only has a 30% chance to be dropped, though as I said, this is affected by luck, so if you have 100% bonus luck, then this goes up to 60%. Then you have the bosses, and those are majority of the bosses that have a guaranteed chest drop. They have varying chances on basic chest, triple chest, penta chest, but again, luck affects this in a 1-to-1 ratio, so 100% doubles it, 200% triples it. Then you have bosses that can multi-evolve. There are those that can evolve 2 weapons at once, 3 weapons at once, and 5 weapons at once. And that is not a normal thing, so if you see a multi-evolve, that was just lucky that you picked up the right chest in the right moment, and that wouldn't have happened with all the other chests that could be dropped there. And lastly, we have bosses that are immune to knockback, to rosary, pentagram, moon damage, also immune to freezes except for the Orologion. For whatever reason, the freeze effect of the Orologion always works, but these are the toughest enemies to deal with. For example, the 25-minute boss on the library, all the guardians, all the major bosses that you can face that you have to take down to unlock something in the game or so. Those are the bosses that are immune to pretty much everything. Now I will talk about all the noteworthy stats in the game that don't explain themselves themselves and have some quirks to them. First of all, we have the health upgrades, and you need to know that all the health upgrades are multiplicative with whatever you have in this very moment. So let's say, for example, you have 100 HP right now and you get a hollow heart with 10% bonus, then you go up to 110 HP. If you get another level in the hollow heart for another 10%, you don't get 10 HP again, but 11 instead. Or in other words, it's just multiplicative and not additive. Also, the bonus HP that you get is received as empty HP, so while it goes up to 110, you still have 100 HP available, and 10 is black, so you have to heal it up first before you can use it. Next up we have armor, and the only thing I want to say about this is take it. Armor is incredibly good as a power up early on to survive. I'm not talking about the armor that you can get as an item in the game, and rather about a power up. I frequently watch new streamers in Vampire Survivors, and one thing I noticed is that they, as well as the chat, really dislike getting armor because it's kind of expensive, but you highly underestimate how good it is to help you survive the spam waves that allow you to level up like crazy, and all of a sudden you are super powerful and you just steamroll through the game. Then we have regeneration, which was recently changed to, instead of giving you the HP amount every second that it shows there, so 1 regeneration would be 1 HP, it instead multiplies the healing that you have in the game. So if you have +1 regeneration, that means that healing is doubled. If you have +2, it's tripled, and so on. And that actually makes it incredibly powerful in some situations. If you combine it with Saraband of Healing, it's in fact the by far best farming method, the endless farming method for gold, since it outscales everything that the game can provide. However, if you're just a beginner, then ignore regeneration, it doesn't really do a lot to you, and if you need the occasional chicken to survive, then you are more likely very soon dead. Then we have amount, and amount is not projectile amount, which the game tries to sell you, because projectile sounds like something that you shoot around, right? Well, wrong. Just take this as amount, ignore the word projectile. It affects something like the whip, that it does additional slashes, it affects something like the Crimson Shroud for additional explosions, then Moon, for example, the initial single targeted explosion that it does, they get bonus experience, and there are only a few exceptions where amount has no effect on it. So for example, something like Pentagram, Garlic, and Laurel, as well as Clock Lancet, they have no difference if you take it, but for most of the other weapons you can actually see the change, while for some of them, like with Moon and Shroud, it happens in the background. The point being, amount is incredibly good, but not what it sounds like. Then we have Curse, and you may be wondering, why does everyone take Curse if you watch a run? Because it just gives more health, then the enemies become faster, they also spawn more frequently and in bigger amounts. Well, the reason is that these enemies that spawn more early on are the weakest enemies in the game. So you just level up very quickly and you overpower them, and you get your build incredibly fast. Before Curse, you were usually maxed out at around 15 to 16 minutes. After Curse, you're already maxed out at 10 minutes, and this is before all the strong enemies start spawning. Now, to be fair, once you're maxed out, you just made the game a lot harder on you, but most people use Limit Break, which allows you to get further stats into your weapon, and that means you can just endlessly outscale the enemies until the very end of the game. Then we have Luck, and I just want to say I covered this like for 10 minutes or so in the first part that I made of this, with tips, tricks, and so on about Vampire Survivors, but to keep it short, Luck affects everything that you may think it affects, and way more. Something like negative events in the game, and chances, and everything pretty much. And while luck is incredibly powerful in the game, it doesn't really help you win, and that's the reason why you never see someone pick the Clover up. It's more like that everything will have a better outcome, but if you're not strong enough to kill the enemies, that won't change anything about that. And finally, we have Limit Break versus character bonuses. If you got to Limit Break, then you may have noticed that your weapons keep upgrading, and this is important, that the stats of the weapon itself change, not the character bonuses. Even when it reads Might, this is just to help understand what gets affected, but it's actually called Power, and what that refers to is the power of the weapon itself. So when it reads +1% Might, it actually means the weapon got +1 bonus damage. This used to be +1 bonus damage, but this got changed to 0.5. And this is multiplied with the Might percent of your character. The reason why this is important is that it's multiplicative, not additive. So if you have 200% might, that means this +1 power is multiplied by 3 and your weapon deals 3 more damage. Now to the boss killing part. If you want to kill a major boss in the game, simply go for Corridor. Whenever it goes off and the colorful animation goes around, it halves the HP of all the enemies hit, and that makes it a very efficient boss killer, trust me. The only other things that you need, especially for the Bone Ball, are weapons that clear the enemies, since the Bone Ball will try to consume them to grow, and if you kill them then it can't do that. And then you can also add some weapons like Thousand Edge, Holy Wand or Heaven's Sword, which allow you to single target him out and just blow him up in a few seconds after you reached him. It's just important that you keep your distance, you don't get anywhere close to him, and once you're strong enough, you hit escape, you check out the map where he is, you walk there, and he only travels from the left to the right side, so you can just stand in the way and wait until he appears. And lastly, I have some little tricks for you. Wall glitching. This may happen to you a couple of times that you are just way too fast or your game lags and suddenly you glitch through the walls. No, this is not a secret, the game simply can't keep up with what's going on right now, and you will walk through the walls and it's a lot of fun to explore the map, but keep in mind, if you try to enter back into the stage while you're not lagging enough or you lost speed for whatever reason, then you won't be able to get back and you're stuck outside of the stage. Now we will get to the first part in the series, which has a lot of advanced things, so stuff like how does luck actually work in the code and what does it all affect, and many more other things. If you liked the video so far and you haven't yet, then please consider giving it a like because it helps out a lot and I would highly appreciate it. Have fun with this one.
Now to unlock Red Death you have to kill the Reaper, but how strong is the Reaper? Well, for every single level that you have, he has 650,000 HP. So at level 100, if you get to the Reaper there, then he has 65 million. That is usually more than what most people achieve in one game in total damage combined, while they deal huge AoE damage to thousands of enemies at once, so yeah, the chance to kill him at that point is pretty impossible. He also has a speed of 1200 and an attack of 65,000. Another very interesting feature of the Reaper is that he has negative knockback, so instead of pushing him away with knockback, you actually do pull him in. It's very subtle and it rather ends in a stutter walking that he does, but it leads to some very interesting scenarios where, for example, I survive for 175 minutes by stuttering him the entire time with Farachi and Labora. Number 7, and this will be a bit complicated to understand. There is a level up limitation on weapons, on what you can get, but the game overall has a lot of things that it does when it checks for what it offers to you. So you might have seen some of my videos where I got 2 garlics in a row in the very beginning, and I'll explain that later on, because there's luck and other things that apply to this, but overall this is what the base game tries to do. If you don't have the level requirements, you can't get a level up for a weapon that you own. Number 8, and this will be a long one. Luck. Just as a general understanding, luck pretty much affects all the chances that exist in the game. Everything that you could think of and not think of. So, some examples on weapons. We talk about Pentagram, the chance to not erase something, crits on Bloody Tear and Heaven's Sword, as well as the explosion on Cherry Bomb. As a fun fact, the 65% Pentagram, so level 7 and beyond, needs a total of 60% luck to never erase. Most of the modes end up on 40 to 50% luck if you play on Hyper, which only gives a chance of 91% and 97.5% to not erase. The only reason why I'm saying only is because somehow, even with 97.5%, Pentagram manages to erase the moment a boss appears and the chest is just gone. So, get going and break those candles in hopes for little clovers. Each one of those increases it by 10%, and with 2 of them, you're guaranteed that Pentagram can't erase stuff. And while we are talking about Pentagram, I want to give 2 fun facts in one. The first one being, Pentagram and Moon do not have damage on their own. The 666 that you see in the game with the variation of ±5 is just visual. The actual damage that it deals is a skill, which always deals max health damage to the enemy. No matter how much health they have, always max health. So for you that means if you strike an enemy with it and the enemy doesn't die, they are immune to this skill. And the second fun fact belonging to this, most but not all of the enemies scale with your level. They have a base HP, for example the wave 29 on the library has 5 health, which is then multiplied with your current level, as well as other buffs like the curse. Luck also affects chest drops and chest quality. By chest drops I mean that certain bosses have a chance to not drop a chest, and this makes it more likely. And chest quality is simply how good the chest is. Is it a single chest? Is it a triple chest? Is it a penta chest? And now the subcategory level ups of luck, what I mentioned at point 7 with the level up limitations. Well, first of all, it influences the 4th level up choice. The game itself says that, right? So this is not really hard to figure out, but the chance to get an existing weapon as level up choice, this is where it becomes juicy and weird. So this pretty much overrides whatever the game decided to give you on level ups. And if you have an even level, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and so on, there is a 60% chance and influenced by luck. And if it's uneven, so 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, it's 30%, also multiplied by luck. And the way the game calculates it, it takes 1 and it subtracts 1 divided by luck. So just to make a very short example, if you have 100% luck, that is your bonus luck, so it's added on top of the base 100% that every character has. 200% is equal to 2, you take the 1 divided by 2, 0.5, you subtract the 0.5 from the 1 and you end up with 0.5, which leads to a total of 110% that you get one offered on even levels and 80% that you get one offered on uneven levels. With 200% luck you do the same calculation again, you have the +1 -1 divided by luck. So if we do it this time, we have the 1 divided by luck. With 200% that's 3, so 0.33, and that results in 0.67 or 67%. On uneven levels we now have a 97% chance to receive a level up for a weapon that we already own. And if you're curious when it's always 100%, it has been a while for even level ups, but not for uneven level ups. You require 230% of luck. This will lead to exactly 70% plus the 30%, it's just the base value, is a total of 100%. Oh boy, and now we get to breakables. Okay, this one is a bit more complicated, so I have to break the maps apart. There are maps that have set spawn points, like the library, the dairy blend, and the Gallo Tower, the new one, right, where they can only spawn in very specific locations. In Mad Forest and Green Acres, however, they can just spawn around you in a circular shape. For now, let's just focus on the library. Luck affects how likely it is that something spawns, and the way the game does it is, every single second, it takes a chance, I think it's 0.3 if I don't remember it wrong, multiplies that with luck, and if that succeeds, if a random roll of a number is lower than that, then it spawns a candle. The candle is just spawned out of your vision range, but within the tile set. If you don't know what a tile set is, this is pretty much a thing that is constantly repeated. Whenever you walk to the left or up or down or right, it's always repeated, it's always the same stuff. And that is one tile set, so in your current tile set, it spawns them around you outside of your vision range. And with more luck, the more likely it becomes at a cap of 500% luck. So, now that you understood that, let's make it even more complicated. I think the limit for breakables is 10. I know it is for library, for others it might be different, but I think it's a global variable, so it applies to all the maps. And once you have 10 candles, 10 breakables around you, and it would spawn another one, it will spawn it, but it destroys another one. And this candle can spawn anywhere, but it's not influenced by luck. This is just a set one, so overall the speed of candle creation goes down a lot just because it's way less likely. But this is the reason why you can have candles spawn next to you. Even if you break a candle, in that very moment a candle might appear in the same spot again. Talking about candle appearing in the same spot, did you know that candles can stack on top of each other? Yes. I think the maximum I've ever seen were 5. I broke one candle and 5 drops came out of them. No, candles cannot have multi-drops, it always drops one thing. So if you see multiple things that come out of a candle, I don't mean they already were on the ground, I mean there was nothing, you break them, 5 things come out, yes, then those were multiple candles in a single spot. And to finish off the breakables in the game, so the candles, braziers, stuff like this, the drop quality is also influenced. So the more luck you have, the better stuff you'll get out of this. I do remember 2 numbers, and one is the highest chance to get the rare stuff, so the really good stuff, is 32% at 200% luck. But don't take these 2 numbers too serious. I tried to find them out, I couldn't confirm it. I do trust the person that said that. The problem is it was very long ago, right? So a lot might have changed in the game, or maybe it's influenced by even more things. The code is very complicated for the game. And the last two things that luck affects are map-defined items. So if you, for example, play Antonio without any luck, then most of the times you'll see 1 to 3 empty tomes in the library. The game will always give you at least one, so if all fail, it will just put one down. But when you play a high luck character, this 1 to 3 average, around 2, I would say, is rather the 2 to 4 average, around 3. And lastly, bad events. Bad events are just things where something happens to you, like the bat swarms that spawn on the Mad Forest, like the Stalker, and the more luck you have, the less likely they become. So if you want to unlock Toasty, make sure you have as little luck as possible, as it just decreases the chance of the Stalker to spawn. And a little luck fun fact at the end, the character that can achieve the most luck without picking up little clovers is Toasty on Molise on Hyper, having 100% luck as a base stat, 20% every 10 levels 5 times until 50, so another 100%, 30% from the power-ups, 20% from Molise being played on Hyper mode, so a total of 250, and another 50 if you get the clover as a passive weapon. As I said, this can be further extended if you pick up the little clovers that drops out of the Breakables, and that is pretty much the maximum that you can get. The next one that gets kinda close to it is X-Dash at 250. All is the same except that instead of getting 20% luck per 10 levels, he only gets 10% luck per 10 levels, and the last one where he gets that is also level 50. Phew, that was a lot of information for point number 8, but I think we can top that with point number 9. Stage, secrets, information and mechanics. We go through them from top to bottom just as they are in the game, and we start off with Mad Forest. On Mad Forest, to evolve a weapon, a boss has to spawn at 10 minutes or after, or the minute 1 bat. That bat has only a 30% chance to drop a chest, so it's quite unlikely, but this is also multiplied with luck. And if you get that drop, just keep it on the floor, max out a weapon that you can evolve, pick it up, and you can do it as you can see it here with Song of Mana. As a little side note, because a lot of people are confused by this, no, there's no internal check in the game that says you have to reach minute 10 to evolve. It's all bound to the bosses and the chests that the bosses drop. The library itself is also 10 minutes forward, no secret chest, but it's special because you use this place to kill the death and unlock Red Death. It uses the feared Rune Tracer Clergy strategy, where you have an insanely large Rune Tracer that keeps you safe combined with the Center Water, and then you use the objects on the map to cause the Rune Tracer bounce like crazy while the Reaper is frozen around you. You pretty much deal 1.3 million damage in around 30 to 40 seconds if it's properly done and if he cooperates. So yeah, that's quite a busted strategy. Next up we have the Dairy Blend. Every single chest on this stage can evolve. And one is a bit more complicated than all the others, which is a chest from the Stalker. If you want to have the chest from the Stalker, you kill him with a Rosary or the Moon, and the alternative is the card, not the weapon. I mean the card that is on the stage. Pentagram scares him off, but it doesn't drop a chest. It also doesn't work for the Toasty unlock. As a reminder, as I previously said, luck makes it less likely that a Stalker spawns, so make sure you have as little luck as possible if you want to make this happen. Otherwise you just make it ridiculously harder to unlock Toasty. Now to a bit of a confusing part. Technically speaking, in the code, the Stalker should be able to triple evolve your weapons. If you kill him with a Rosary and a Moon, you have a 6% chance to get a Penta chest, a 66% chance to get a triple chest, and a 100% chance to get a single chest, all multiplied with luck. So if you have 60% luck, you would be guaranteed a triple chest, and with cards, it's a 3% chance for a Penta chest, 10% chance for a triple chest, and 100% chance for a basic chest. But this doesn't work. Why? I have no idea. It's in the code. The separation also makes sense with the Rosary Moon and the card, that the card is slower, but it always gives a single chest. I have no idea why. I think it's a bug, so let's be a bit cautious with this one. Just for you to know, right now he only drops a single chest always, but I think this is just a bug and it will be fixed in the future. The newest stage, Gallo Tower, is also 10 minutes onwards, so no pre-10 minute evolution. And it has a secret character, which is Leda, who starts with Holy Wand as his starting weapon and 100% might, as well as some other bonuses and penalties. The Dairy Blends had a green dev called Stalker, and here we have the blue dev called Drowner. Now, the Drowner has a couple of interesting things. First of all, you need to understand that there are two Drowners that can appear. The first one is spawned when the grab appears at 25 minutes. Every 6 seconds in the game, it checks if you're below the grab position-wise, and if you are, then it just spawns the Drowner in. That Drowner at 25 minutes can be killed using the moon or a rosary. And now it gets a bit more complicated. Just like with the Stalker, it's supposed to multi-evolve your weapons, but it can only drop a single chest. Again, I assume that is just, a bug in the code that is not supposed to be like this, and it might be fixed in the future. But talking about multi-evolutions, the 20-minute boss, the Dragon, will triple evolve if you get a triple chest, and you of course have all the weapons to evolve, as well as the synergy weapons. And the Crab can give a Penta evolve. So if you're lucky enough to get a Penta chest and you have 5 weapons that you can evolve in this moment, it will evolve all of them. Now we have the 2 bonus stages. I will start with Molise. This one is very exciting. It has 3 chest drops and all of them can multi-evolve 5 times. So you could evolve a total of 15 weapons on this map. Not that that is actually possible, but it would be possible in theory. And one unique feature is that it ends at 15 minutes, at least that the Reaper spawns, but after 15 minutes gold pots spawn for 5 minutes until 20 minutes. Then it has a 1-minute break. And from minute 21 to 22, it spawns a ton of gold pots. Currently the record in gold earned in a run like this is 40,000. I have that video also linked in the pinned comment. But one thing you need to know is if you want to get gold from revivals, as you know in the game if you die you get bonus gold, then you have to survive until 30 minutes and die afterwards. Otherwise it will just count as a usual death and you won't get anything. And the last bonus stage is Green Acres, which just has a bonus health increase to the enemies, and it will randomly spawn a wave from any of the 4 stages. And to round out the stage topic, all of the stages, so not the bonus stages, just the stages, pick up items on the floor. For example, on the library, as we saw, we have Empty Tome, and we also have Stone Mask, and if you pick them up after you already have 6 passive weapons, you will pick them up as additional passive weapons. So on the library you can have a maximum of 8 instead of the 6 that the game offers. On Gallo Tower that is the same, having the Brazier and the Spellbinder. On Dairy Blend you can get an additional 4, so 10 total passive weapons, being the Wings, Armor, Attract Orb and Candelabrador. And on Mad Forest a total of 5, being the Skullomaniac, Clover, Pomerola, Hollow Heart and Spinach. Note, because this always gets asked, no, if you have something maxed out it will not go to level 6. If you pick it up while something is already level 5, it will show you a level 6, but you notice it doesn't work because it has no description text of what it would do. And if you press escape to check your stats, you'll see nothing has changed.
Phew, now that was a lot. I could have definitely added more information like the new stages and everything. However, back then the wiki was barely populated and nowadays it has all of this information, so you can just go there and check it out. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did then please give the video a like, it helps out so much, and this was by far the heaviest video I've ever done with over 60 hours of work put into it. And if you enjoyed listening to me, then feel free to check out some other videos and maybe you decide to even subscribe to the channel. See you the next time, and I'm out.